This video will focus on how to use the ART program of studies to plan instruction so that all standards are addressed in the courses you teach. We will be examining the benchmark and indicator levels for purposes of planning and assessment. For a broader look at the POS, please refer to the POS overview and POS structure videos. As a quick review, the ART program is organized into 4 strands: communicate, create, respond, and connect. There are 5 standards, 1 for communicate, 2 in create, 1 for respond, and 1 for connect. Benchmarks under each standard, indicated in the gray boxes, are the grade level expectations for student learning by the end of the course. The specific learning outcomes that help students to meet standards are described at the indicator level. Lessons and units focus on learning at the indicator level. Over the course of a unit or a quarter of lessons, students should have the opportunity to experience many of the benchmarks. The one exception is in Standard 3, Art Media Techniques and Processes. Those benchmarks and indicators would be experienced depending upon the media chosen for each lesson. This is the lesson plan format commonly used for art lessons in FCPS schools. Whether you use it or another format such as the Learn model, you should consider which indicators should be taught during different parts of a lesson or unit. The FCPS Art lesson plan format is structured into the sections Engage, Develop, Create, and Reflect. In this context, Create refers to the part of the lesson where students make art, not the Create strand of the POS. Let's look at the benchmarks and indicators for Standard 1, Communicate. As you plan for instruction, consider where some of these might be addressed in your lesson. During what parts of a lesson might the theme come into play? Well, it should be woven into all aspects of your lesson, and every lesson should address the theme of the course. How about steps in the creative process? Idea generation, research, and experimentation usually happen during the develop part of lessons. Refinement may occur during develop or create. How might you address presentation? Well, it could be part of a reflection process. But building a portfolio may not be part of a specific lesson, rather it's something that would be accumulated during the term of the course. Take a moment to review Standard 2, which deals with art forms, methods, and fundamentals. When might some of these be incorporated into a lesson? Well, any of the indicators under these benchmarks could be discussed when describing and analyzing artworks during the Engage part of the lesson. What about specific fundamentals? Students can actively engage with learning about and applying them in their work during Develop or Create. Take a moment to look over the benchmarks in Standard 3, Media-Specific Techniques and Processes. This list applies to elementary courses. Secondary courses offer some of these media along with others. For more specifics, see the Secondary Art Program of Studies. Art media and techniques and processes are taught, practiced, and used during the Develop and Create parts of the lesson plan. Now let's look at the benchmarks in Standard 4, Respond. Standard 4 focuses on students responding to art. Where could you incorporate indicators relating to aesthetics and criticism? Aesthetic discussions are a natural way to pique student interest at the beginning of a lesson by looking at art, making personal connections, and expressing thoughts and opinions. Art criticism also fits well in Engage. Identifying, analyzing, and interpreting artworks helps students to learn how other artists have chosen to communicate ideas visually. Discussions about craftsmanship and evaluating the success of an artwork can occur during Create as a midpoint check or after completion as part of a reflection activity. Let's look at the benchmarks for Standard 5 Connect. Connecting background knowledge from other content areas and from personal experiences increases the sticky factor of what students learn in art and helps them to construct meaning. Which of these indicators could you refer to during the engage part of the lesson? What might help students to develop their own ideas? Students can research art references as a way of developing background knowledge and ideas for art making. And they can also apply knowledge of other disciplines as they develop and refine their ideas. Indicators addressing art institutions and careers can sometimes be incorporated into reflection activities, presentations, and exhibitions. As you plan lessons or units, this POS organizer can help you choose instructional goals based on indicators from the grade level or course that you're teaching. It will also serve as a guide for what to assess during and after the lesson or unit. The POS organizer template is available for download on Blackboard. Indicator language in the POS is fairly broad. It makes sense to choose how it will be interpreted within the context of your lesson. This may require unpacking indicators to get at the specific learning you want students to achieve in a lesson. For instance, in this lesson, for a 7th grade foundations class, the teacher wants students to explore the theme of transformation in a drawing lesson. Let's take a closer look at how indicators can be unpacked so they clearly express what you want students to know and be able to do. In this lesson, students are expected to use a visual metaphor when expressing an idea about transformation. When unpacking an indicator, we need to interpret broad ideas in a more specific way to determine student learning goals. What would students need to know first? Probably what a metaphor is. How will they interpret that metaphor in a drawing? They may be familiar with literary metaphors, but not so familiar with visual ones. They would need to view and discuss art examples that use metaphor to convey an idea. Once that background knowledge is built, they can work on incorporating this into a personal response to the art-making challenge. As you can see, these 3 learning goals address using a metaphorical approach to communicating ideas about transformation. They should be shared with students and can become part of what is assessed during the lesson. Let's look at 2 indicators in the Create strand. The Fundamentals indicator is very broad. For this drawing lesson, student learning goals might focus on how lines can be used to create variations in value. The drawing indicator also needs to be unpacked. In this case, the teacher decides that student learning goals are to practice hatching techniques and then to apply those skills in a drawing that renders objects showing value. One last thought on using indicators to plan a lesson. Not every indicator will be addressed in every lesson or even in every unit, and that's okay. One strength of the layout of the new program of studies is that it shows several course levels at a glance. This is helpful for differentiating instruction for a variety of student needs. In some cases, a student may not yet have knowledge or skills that you might expect them to have. Scaffolding of learning goals can be facilitated by choosing indicators from the grade level or course below the one being taught and adapting it to apply to your lesson. By the same token, if a student is advanced and ready for more of a challenge, indicators from the course above the current level could be adapted. Let's use the drawing techniques indicator from earlier to see how we might scaffold or extend it to meet student needs. The 7th grade indicator lists stippling, hatching, and blending techniques. The teacher wants students to focus on hatching in this particular lesson. Since students learned about blending to create value in the previous course, she might start by having students compare and contrast the 2 techniques. Then they could practice and incorporate hatching in their drawings. Several students may have no understanding of how to create areas of light and dark. The teacher would scaffold by choosing goals that would help students explore ways to create a range of values, starting with blending techniques. Scaffolded learning goals might look something like this, where students first identify where an artist has created areas of light and dark, then practicing both techniques. The teacher might allow students to incorporate the technique they feel most comfortable with in this drawing and continue to build on skills in future lessons. For a way to extend student learning goals for advanced students, the teacher might add an extra challenge to combine several techniques for creating light and dark values to enhance the illusion of volume in the objects drawn. You would want to consider what evidence to use in determining whether students have met the student learning goals. Evidence for understanding of what a metaphor is and how other artists have depicted transformations using metaphors could be gathered during aesthetic discussions. This might be recorded by students on a worksheet or their visual journal. Evidence of expressing ideas about transformation would be found in preliminary sketches and the final drawing. Assessing student performance should consider how well they met all the indicators of the lesson, not just the final product. As you can see here, there are many ways to capture data on student performance. You may wish to keep track of which SBIs have been addressed during a course on a monthly or a quarterly basis. As lessons are completed, the SBIs that you've addressed can be checked off. Periodically, you should note where there are gaps and consider incorporating those indicators into future lessons. This will ensure that students receive balanced instruction throughout the course. This elementary POS checklist is available for download from the Visual Arts organization on Blackboard. A secondary POS checklist is also available for download on Blackboard. Just choose the media techniques and processes that are applicable to the course that you're teaching. This concludes the video on using the POS to plan for instruction and assessment. If you have questions, feel free to contact us in the Fine Arts office.